I'm going to do a quick demonstration of something that I would do for inquiry or for a kind of a phenomenon introduction. So my students right now, I teach high school chemistry, so they're working on intermolecular forces and polarity, but at a very low level, this could also be appropriate for your elementary school students. You would just use different explanations and different vocabulary. So the first thing that I would do is I would do this as a class demonstration. Okay, so I would just start, take a cup, take some tap water, and pour it in. Okay. And then I would ask students about, and I would show them the container, and I ask them like, who has cooking oil in their house? Like, what have you seen your parents maybe use it for? What have you used it for? What do you notice about it? Okay, so show them the container it comes in, kind of compare it, maybe see if they have any words they can use to talk about the differences between it. You can let them touch it if you want to, pass it around. You can notice it smells a little bit different than water, right? So let them interact with these, okay? And then have them kind of compare what do you notice between the water and the oil, okay? And if you can, even bring in a couple different types of oil for them just to see. This is obviously vegetable oil, but maybe bring in some olive oil or something. Not that they have to touch, but just they can see the bottle and maybe make those connections, okay? And so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to put a drop of water or a drop of food coloring, excuse me, into the water. And then I would make sure that they can all see it. So we would just observe it, we'd watch it. Okay. At this point, they can either discuss or maybe draw or make notes, use some words, observations of what's going on there. Okay. And we can kind of see how slowly that is spreading throughout. And this in and itself could be a total inquiry phenomenon. You could do this with um, cold water and warm up some water as well, and watch how quickly or slowly the food coloring diffuses throughout. And you could talk about those terms of diffusion, okay, and talk about um, how these particles are going to spread. Okay, so we kind of observe that, right? And I'm moving it around a little bit more than you should, but we'll kind of swirl it around, get it all mixed in. All right. And then I would say, okay, now we've explored our oil and I'm going to pour it in. And you could have at this point also have them make predictions. What do you think is going to happen? Okay, because creating that knowledge gap can be really powerful. Or if you have them make a prediction and they realize that they're wrong or that they're incorrect, that allows them some space to grow. Okay, so we're going to do this. I'm going to pour it fairly slowly. So I'm going to kind of drip it down the side and we're going to watch what happens, right? And we see there pretty clear separation of those substances, right? And so at that point, I would have them kind of talk about like, oh, what do you notice, right? Very open-ended questions. We're not correcting at this point. We're not doing really any teaching at this point. We're just kind of creating those knowledge gaps and then seeing what they think is happening. Okay. And this is something that you can keep coming back to. You can leave this out, all week or for however long your lesson lasts on your desk for students to kind of interact with. Obviously, I'd use like a bottle with a cap, but um, so we have this, right? We can see that separation. We can move it around, can swirl it. And now I'm going to come back. We're going to predict again. How do we think the food coloring is going to interact now with the oil? What's it going to look like? What's it going to do, right? And so we'll put that in and we'll notice, kind of hard to see with the ridges. I maybe didn't pick the best cup here, but the food coloring kind of forms these little balls, right? And so at that point, again, we're not doing any teaching, we're just observing. There they are. Okay, what happened? What's going on here? Okay, maybe they could draw a picture, and hopefully they're pretty into this right now, right? They're wondering what is going on. Okay, and now I'm gonna take a flashlight. Okay, and we're gonna observe. I'm gonna put in one more drop of food coloring. Okay, and we can see what happens there. It's kind of slowly sinking down. Okay, I'm gonna grab one more thing. Okay. And at this point, you could stop here. This would be plenty of inquiry and phenomena to get you lots and lots of mileage. Um, I like to go one more step, at least with my high school students. And what was probably more appropriate is at this point you stop. Okay. Um, you work through all the lessons, right? You keep coming back to this idea, right? You keep saying, remember when we talked about the oil and the water, right? Have them interact more with it. Okay, talk about how they're similar and different. And what you would do at the end then is come back to this and maybe have the students do it. So set it up in small group little stations, have the students do this. As they go through each step, then they would explain. So this is kind of like your cumulative end of the unit lab. They would have to explain using the vocabulary that you've talked about, or maybe draw pictures, what's going on at each step. And then what I would have them do, so after you've already completed your whole unit on this, I would take it another step just because it kind of adds a whole nother level. So these are Alka-Seltzer tabs. A lot of them are not familiar with them. This is the Walgreens brand. I would show them. Okay, we would talk about it, we read about it. A lot of my high school students are not familiar with it. I don't know who uses these anymore. Maybe they're just on the shelf for science teachers to buy. But we talk about how it's made of aspirin and sodium bicarbonate, which is going to be your antacid also. Your baking soda, right? We talk about how it relieves heartburn and acid and body aches and pains and all that. And it's a medicine, right? We don't just take it for fun. You want to be careful when they're touching it. It might be something that you would want to touch just because there is aspirin in it, which can be a safety issue for small kids. You don't want to give small kids aspirin, so you wouldn't want it to get on their fingers or anything. And I would have them break off a little piece. And again, you might want to do this for them. And we're going to put it in and we're going to watch what happens. Okay. And so can do this, right? And we see all those bubbles, and then we see kind of this additional layer, take it off the light for this, of bubbles that's going to form. Okay. And so this is kind of a fun way to take it to another level and say, okay, what's happening now? Like, how are those bonds breaking? You can listen, you hear it fizzing, right? And so we do this a couple more times. And I put in another drop of food coloring just for fun to kind of observe what happens there. Okay. And we call this lava lamp at this point. I don't know how many students are familiar with it, but you can hear it really fizzing and going, right? And so that can kind of be your end of the unit. Now we're extending our understanding here now that we have these bubbles forming, they're popping up to the surface. Now what's happening, right? And you can see these big like blobs kind of coming and going. They hear the bubbles forming. There's this little layer of foam at the top, and then you can really take it to another level and just kind of have them think, like extend their understanding then, especially if you need those extensions for some of your higher kids. And if you don't need some of the extensions, some of your kids aren't ready for that, that's okay because they're still going to enjoy it. And it's just it's a cool process. So whenever you're kind of thinking through your phenomenon that you want to use, you really want to be intentional about what questions you ask when you're introducing your topic. Think about ways that you can have students interact with it, especially if you can use materials that are familiar to them. Some stuff, obviously, a video is more appropriate, but for any of it, if you can keep something where you can maybe keep it out on your desk or you can keep referring back to it. And then if you can end your unit with some sort of extension where you add another step to it, and that will help your students that need that extension, that will kind of automatically differentiate for them. And then for the students who don't need it, it's still a cool, fun experiment where they're still observing, they're getting to use the science terms that we talked about. They're still thinking about what is happening, right? And honestly, asking questions is one of the most important parts of science, even if you can't answer them. So then we kind of wrap up at the end. Maybe they draw pictures. It's very photogenic if you have like a photo album that you keep with parents. And then they can just dispose of all of it. Okay. And I'm going to come back with a few other ideas. Okay. Another way that you can use phenomena to introduce a topic is to show videos, right? And so what I like to do is plan on showing a video a few times. And if there's anything that you can do to kind of, you have to be intentional. Sometimes you want to just show the video. Don't give students any inclination about what it's about. Don't introduce it, just show it. And I especially like to do this with the sound completely off. I think it kind of grabs their attention, right? And they have to really focus on just the visual of what's happening, at least the first time. The other thing you can do is kind of prep the students. I like to show them the video with the sound off first, and then maybe kind of discuss it and give them some things to look for, watch it again, and then watch it a third time where they maybe draw pictures or write observations or ask questions. Okay, so we kind of get that multi-layer. So one of the ones that I really like that I use in the same unit that I'm using now with our water is I really like the slow-mo guys. So this one is a water droplet. They have these like super fancy high-speed cameras, and I like to have them watch this water drop. And I'm gonna kind of speed up here. They do like an introduction, right? So they're just dropping water. They talk about their camera. Okay, and they're just gonna drop some water on a really, really full cup there, right? And this is something that you could have students do then, right? You could have them drop water and watch it. That'd be very simple, low mess. And that could be something that you have them do after this video. So here we're gonna watch it. And we see that water like really likes to stick to itself, right? So the first time, we're just gonna watch it on silent, okay? And we'll run through it. And then at that point, after we watch this, okay, the second time through, I would have them kind of intentionally watch it. Let's look for what the surface does that the water's bouncing onto. What do you notice about the size of the water droplet each time it hits that surface, right? So what do you notice about the water on the, I don't know, whatever dropper thing he's got there? Okay, so give them some things to intentionally look for, and then you'll watch it a third time and have some intentional questions for them. So do you want them to maybe draw a picture of what it looks like when the water droplet hits the surface and it kind of forms that ripple and it bends down, right? Um, what are we looking for here? What questions do you have? So maybe have like a template for them to fill out. Okay. Um, let's watch it. What happens the first time? Why do you think that's happening? You see that big dip, right? Then it appears that the water bounces up. How is this the same and different of like a basketball, right? Does the droplet change size each time and so forth, okay? And then this is something that you can keep coming back to. So again, at the end of your unit, okay, you come back to this and you have students kind of show their growth, show their knowledge. And it's especially powerful if you can also have them look at what they wrote the first time and then see how much they have grown and what they now understand and can explain after a week of working with this material or however long it is. Okay. Midway through, I would absolutely revisit this, right? So I would come back to this or have students do it. They're obviously not going to be able to see that detail. There's all sorts of things you can do with water that are very simple to do within your classroom. So just some ideas as to how to use this phenomenon, kind of use this inquiry mindset and to make sure that you continue to thread it through your lesson. And to really be intentional, how do you want to present this? It's a pretty important moment in their learning is their first kind of interaction with this. What thoughts we don't want to lead them too much, but we want to make sure they're going in the right direction. And if you do some kind of open discussion with your classes, as we've seen kind of in those videos, you can also get a really good idea of their misconceptions, which is equally, if not more important, to understand what they misunderstand versus what they don't understand or what they do understand. Misconceptions are hard to change. Um, and so those are maybe the most important thing to kind of keep a listening ear out for.